You were cursed the moment you saw the truth no one else could, not through facts, but through feeling. You walked into rooms and felt betrayal before a word was spoken. You predicted pain that had not happened yet, and when it did, no one remembered you warned them. You read people's intentions like open books, but when you spoke the truth, they called you paranoid. This is not intuition, it's a war between what you know and what the world allows you to say. Carl Jung did not call this a gift. He called it a burden, so heavy it could fracture the psyche. You don't live in one world, you live in two. The one people pretend is real, and the one beneath it where the lies rot, where futures scream in silence, where truth does not wait for permission. And if you don't learn to carry that truth the right way, it will burn you alive from the inside. This is not a personality type. This is survival. And today, we go where Jung warned no one should go alone. You see the lie before it's told, not because someone blinked or shifted in their seat, but because something in the air went wrong. It's in the silence between words, in the way their eyes avoid the truth before their mouth does. You don't know how you know. You just know. You wake from dreams that have not happened yet. You feel grief that does not belong to you. You absorb fear in rooms that look cheerful on the surface, and no one else notices. They laugh. They trust. They believe what they see, but your mind was never wired to stop at the surface. This is the hidden curse of insight. The deeper you see, the more you suffer. Because what others deny, you endure. What they dismiss, you carry. Carl Jung warned of this. He did not call it a talent. He called it a psychic burden, a dangerous edge of the mind few are born with, and even fewer survive. Most people live in one world, the visible, but you live in two, the one others accept, and the one that screams underneath it. You're not just intuitive, you're exposed to patterns no one taught you, to wounds no one admitted, to truths no one wanted you to say out loud. This is what no one tells you about being gifted. It's not light, it's shadow. It's not power, it's pressure. And the more you see, the more alone you become. It does not start with a theory or a label. It starts with a feeling that something is off. You're a child in a room full of adults, and you know who's angry before they raise their voice. You sit quietly, but inside, you are hearing the arguments that have not happened yet. You are just 7 years old, but you're carrying emotions that feel 70. You start having dreams, not the kind where you fly or fall, but dreams that come true. You see a breakup, and it happens. You feel a loss, and the call comes. No one told you this was possible. No one warned you how painful it would be to feel so much that was not even yours. At first, you think everyone experiences this. You think everyone senses the tension in a room before it starts. You think everyone looks at someone smiling and knows they are falling apart. But slowly, reality peels back. You try to explain what you see, and they look at you like you're making it up. Too sensitive, too intense, too much. Family dismisses it. Teachers label it as distraction. Friends laugh it off. You start hiding it. And that's when the real separation begins. Carl Jung called this type the intuitive introvert, a person who perceives the world not through external senses, but through a quiet inner knowing, a direct connection to the unconscious. You don't rely on logic or proof. You receive the truth, raw and unfiltered, through symbols, energy, dreams, and emotions. You're not analyzing the world, you're absorbing it. But as you grow older, something darker begins to creep in. The line between what's yours and what is not starts to blur. You cry after touching someone else's hand, and you don't know why. You walk into a room and feel panic that does not belong to you. You start wondering, am I gifted? Or am I losing my mind? Jung saw this again and again. People born with this psychic radar often grow up without maps. They are overwhelmed, ungrounded, and doubted by everyone, including themselves. Because when no one mirrors your experience back to you, you begin to question if it was ever real to begin with. You start splitting yourself in two. The normal you, who nods, smiles, and pretends, and the real you, who lives in secret, decoding the emotional architecture of every moment. But the moment you realized you were different was not the day you saw too much. It was the day you tried to speak it, and were met with silence. You carry a perception no one else sees, a sensitivity no one else understands. and a haunting truth. You were never taught how to survive this. Because what you have is not just intuition. It's a mirror to the unconscious. And most people spend their whole lives trying not to look in that direction. Carl Jung did not believe people were blank slates. He believed we arrived here with psychic blueprints already etched into our being, maps of how we perceive, feel, and exist. And one of the rarest, most mystifying blueprints was that of the intuitive introvert. According to Jung, every psyche operates through 4 core functions: thinking, feeling, sensation, and intuition. Most people lean on sensation, the physical world, what they can see, touch, measure, prove. Their perception is anchored to the concrete. Their truth is what they can verify, but not you. Your dominant function, the way you experience reality itself, is introverted intuition, which, in Jung's words, is not based on external experience at all. It's based on perception via the unconscious. This means you don't perceive what is. You perceive what underlies what is. Not the behavior, but the motive. Not the words, but the energy behind them. Not the outcome, but the unseen force shaping it. While others ask, "What happened?" you ask, "What does this mean?" Jung called this form of intuition directed upon the inner object, a reality that isn't external, but is still realer than real. Inner objects appear to the intuitive perception as subjective images of things, which, though not to be met with in external experience, really determine the contents of the unconscious. Carl Jung. Translation: you see the structure before it manifests. You perceive archetypes before they play out in real time. You don't just read people, you decode them, not their personality, their myth. You see the mother, the wounded child, the false king, the savior complex, not in fairy tales, in your coworkers, your partner, your friends. To others, this seems like overthinking. To you, it's pattern recognition. But this pattern recognition isn't logical. It's symbolic. It doesn't arrive like a math equation. It arrives like a dream you can't shake, a sentence that feels loaded with something deeper, a glance that contains an entire backstory. Your mind sees blueprints while others are still seeing bricks. And that's the gift. But it's also where the danger begins. Because while intuition is your dominant function, your weakest is sensation, your connection to the here and now. Most people use their body as a compass. They feel their hunger, their exhaustion, the temperature in the room. They're grounded in presence. But the intuitive introvert floats above the scene. Their body is there, but their attention is in the symbolic realm, watching patterns unfold, tracking energy shifts, feeling emotional data in ways they can't explain. And the more this happens, the less grounded they become. Jung warned about this imbalance. He said that without grounding in the physical world, the intuitive introvert becomes aloof, not just from people, but from reality itself. They begin to drift into abstraction, into isolation, into disconnection from the world that everyone else insists is real. You begin to lose track of time. You forget to eat. You can't feel your body. You start to question what's real and what's not, because your internal world feels far more vivid than the one in front of you. And that's not madness. That's the price of seeing too much. The more symbolic your mind becomes, the more estranged you are from sensation, from anchor, from gravity, from the stabilizing force that says, this is here, this is now, this is real. Without that anchor, your gift mutates, your sight spirals, your insights lose form, and what once felt like a blessing starts to feel like a storm you can't control. It does not happen all at once. One day, you just start noticing things other people don't. And instead of being amazed, they get uncomfortable. You walk into a room and feel a disturbance no one else notices. The energy is off. The roles feel scripted. Someone's laughing too loud. Someone else is hiding something behind a smile. You try to speak at once, to say what you see, but they look at you like you have ruined the moment, so you stop. You learn the 3 rules that every intuitive introvert carries like invisible scars. Smile, nod, pretend. You become an expert at acting normal. You match their tone, mirror their rhythm. You let them talk about the weather while you're silently mapping the fractures in their psyche. Because if you say too much, they leave. If you see too deeply, they run. If you reveal what's beneath the surface, they call you intense, dramatic, paranoid, so you keep it inside. One foot stays in their world, the world of handshakes, small talk, social rituals, but the other foot drifts further and further into the symbolic realm, into the realm of archetypes, emotional undercurrents, unsaid motives, and unseen forces. It's a split reality, and you live between them. To the world, you're calm, quiet, maybe a bit aloof, but inside, it's chaos. You're carrying the grief of strangers, the secrets no one says out loud, the warning signs no one else can read. And it's not poetic, it's exhausting. You feel lonely in crowds, empty in conversations, spiritually starved in a culture obsessed with noise. And the worst part isn't that people misunderstand you. It's that you start to question if you even belong at all. Carl Jung saw this pattern clearly. He wrote that the intuitive introvert becomes a complete enigma to those around them, because their inner reality is so rich, so complex, so attuned to forces beyond the immediate, that they become foreign to the world they live in. You're not absent, you're just elsewhere, thinking in metaphors while others argue facts, feeling energies while others chase goals, whispering with symbols while others shout opinions. And after a while you realize, this isn't something you do, it's who you are. It's not a phase or a mood or a quirk. It's the way your mind was designed to navigate the world. But it comes with a cost, because the more you pretend to belong to the ordinary, the more you betray the extraordinary perception that makes you who you are. And so, you live between two worlds, not fully in either, not fully seen, not fully safe. You are the bridge, but bridges aren't destinations. They're just the space in between. And if you stay in that in-between too long, something in you begins to collapse under the weight of being too much for this world, and too invisible in it. You were given sight, but not a shield. You were given truth, but not instructions. And that's the danger, because when you see too much, without understanding how to carry it, your own mind becomes the battlefield. Carl Jung spent decades studying the consequences of this. He discovered 3 psychological traps, each one subtle, seductive, and devastating. And if you don't recognize them, they will turn your gift into your destruction. Archetypal inflation. You stop perceiving the pattern and start believing you are the pattern. At first, it's subtle. You sense more than others. You see what they miss. You feel things no one says and realize you're almost always right. You feel chosen, special, necessary, and maybe you are. But slowly something begins to shift. You don't just sense the archetype, you start to become it. You're no longer just intuitive. You're the prophet, the wounded healer, the savior, the seer who suffers for others' ignorance. And it feels noble, purposeful, like your pain is part of some cosmic assignment. You begin to isolate not out of rejection, but superiority. They wouldn't understand. They're not ready. They need me, even if they hate me. But what's really happening is inflation. Your ego is merging with archetypal material, mythic roles that belong to the collective unconscious, and you start to believe they're you. Jung called this the most dangerous condition for intuitive types: possession by the unconscious. You're no longer a person with a perception. You've become the perception. And once that happens, there's no room for feedback, growth, or grounding, only symbolic identity, and the slow corrosion of your human self beneath it. How to spot it? You feel secretly superior, but misunderstood. You frame suffering as proof of your sacred role. You reject help, believing no one else gets it. You speak in absolutes. Archetypes have replaced nuance. You're not broken. You're inflated. And until you step out of the myth you've mistaken for your identity, you can't find your way back to yourself. Psychic contamination. You don't just feel others, you become them. The intuitive introvert isn't just sensitive to emotion, they absorb it. Like a psychic sponge, you enter a room and soak in everyone's psychological material. You sense someone's grief, and suddenly you feel it in your own body. You detect unspoken anxiety, and you begin pacing without knowing why. You hear someone's trauma, and it becomes your wound to carry. At first it feels like compassion. You're helping, healing, holding space. But eventually, you start to disappear. Your boundaries dissolve. You forget what feelings are yours. You carry guilt, shame, grief, none of which belong to you. You begin to vanish into other people's stories. You take responsibility for their healing. You think if you just love more, fix more, give more, they'll change. But what you're really doing is escaping the terrifying task of facing your own self. You're so attuned to others that you lose your own shape. And worse, being needed becomes your only proof of worth. Jung didn't call this empathy. He saw it as psychic contamination, a boundary collapse between self and other that ends in exhaustion, emotional fusion, and identity loss. How to spot it? You feel guilty for things that aren't your fault. You struggle to say no, or feel selfish when you do. You don't know where others end and you begin. You keep people close, not because you love them, but because they need you. You're not too sensitive. You're too open. And if you don't close the door sometimes, you'll bleed out helping people who won't even notice you're drowning. Symbolic collapse. When everything has meaning, nothing is real. This is the final trap, and the most terrifying. When you live in symbols long enough, the real world starts to blur. You begin to interpret everything as a message. Every song lyric is a sign. Every coincidence is a cosmic nudge. Every delay, every bird, every number, proof of destiny in motion. But what begins as intuition morphs into obsession. You no longer trust reality. You can't tell whether what you're feeling is prophetic or paranoid. You interpret dreams as fate. You treat anxiety as revelation. You confuse trauma for spiritual clarity. You enter a state Jung feared most: psychic fragmentation. He saw patients who could no longer distinguish between symbolic reality and concrete reality, and they were tormented by meaning, because when everything means something, you lose the ability to rest. You stop living. You start decoding, constantly, and reality becomes unbearable, not because it's too empty, but because it's too full. How to spot it? You feel anxious without knowing why, but you're sure it's a sign you overinterpret everything. Nothing feels random. You distrust facts. Intuition must know better. You become afraid of being wrong because your identity depends on being right. This is what psychic burnout looks like. Not screaming, not breakdown, but slow disconnection from shared reality. And unless you learn how to ground yourself again, you'll float so far into the symbolic, you'll forget how to live. You're functioning. You wake up. You go to work. You answer texts. You laugh at the right times. No one suspects anything is wrong, but inside, you feel like a ghost wearing a costume that fits too well. You've learned how to survive with your gift, not by expressing it, but by hiding it. You see things that others can't. You feel truths that haven't been spoken. You pick up on energy shifts so subtle they'd sound insane if you said them out loud. So, you stop saying them. You keep your knowing to yourself, and from the outside, you look calm, composed, maybe even wise. But inside, you're carrying too much. No one sees what you see. And worse, no one sees what it costs you to keep seeing. You live a double life. On the outside, you're playing the role of the person people expect. But on the inside, you're the seer, constantly absorbing, decoding, enduring a reality that no one around you is even aware of. And after a while, it starts to wear you down. You feel isolated even in love. You feel disconnected even in friendship. You're surrounded by people, but utterly alone in experience. This is stage 2, the psychic no man's land Jung warned about. Not because it's dramatic, but because it's silent. The world doesn't notice you're suffering. You're not melting down. You're fading. And this is where most intuitive introverts stay stuck. Because it's manageable. You've learned how to wear the mask. You've learned how to feel everything without reacting to anything. You've mastered the art of pretending normal, but the cost is enormous. You begin to forget how to speak your own truth. You start questioning your own perceptions, and somewhere along the line, you convince yourself that this is just the price of being gifted. But that's the lie, because this stage was never meant to be your destination. It was only ever meant to be your test. The turning point doesn't come when someone else sees you. It comes when you decide that your perception deserves to be carried with care, not hidden in shame. Because the truth is, you can't unsee what you've seen, but you can learn to carry it differently. Not as a burden that breaks you, but as a truth that transforms you. And that's what stage 3 is about. Not surviving what you are, but integrating it, so it serves you instead of swallowing you. Most people never make it here. They either drown in their perception or shut it down entirely. But if you have survived stage 2, if you have made it through the isolation, the psychic traps, the emotional chaos, there's another path. Not one that numbs your gift, but one that teaches you how to carry it without letting it consume you. This is stage 3, integration. The return of your power, but rooted, contained, translated, directed. You don't stop being intuitive, you start being sovereign. And to get there, you must master 3 practices Jung believed were essential for people like you. Reclaiming the body, sensation practice. Bring intuition into the body to contain it safely. Intuition lives in the symbolic, but survival lives in the physical. You can't live your life entirely in the archetypal realm. Your visions need a container, and your body is that container. The more you ground into sensation, touch, movement, smell, rhythm, the more stable your inner world becomes. Jung warned that intuitive introverts often have an underdeveloped connection to sensation. They float, dissociate, forget to eat. They become so lost in meaning that they forget what it's like to feel present. But sensation isn't stupid, it's sacred. It's the nervous system's way of saying, you're here, you're alive, you're safe. Practices that reconnect you to the body. Walking meditation, noticing the pressure of each step. Cooking, experiencing smell, taste, texture with mindfulness. Gardening, letting soil and growth remind you of physical cycles. Breathwork, using the breath to return from mental spiral, cold showers, or tactile grounding. Returning to here when you feel lost in symbols. This is not about becoming a sensation type. It's about anchoring your psychic perception in something solid, so it doesn't drift into overwhelm. This is how you build a stable foundation to hold what your intuition brings in. Translating the vision, creative, verbal expression, give form to the formless. Carl Jung. What you see is not meant to stay inside you. If you don't express it, it rots. It overwhelms. It grows heavy. Intuitive insight is energy, and energy must move. That's why translation is vital. Whether through words, images, music, philosophy, or design, you must turn your perceptions into form, because form protects. Jung believed that when we trap unconscious content inside ourselves, it gains power over us. But when we express it, give it art, voice, structure, it loses its chaos and becomes wisdom. Ways to translate your perception: write, journaling, poetry, storytelling, paint, even abstractly. Let symbols flow out. Teach, share ideas, philosophies, frameworks. Create, design rituals, systems, models for others to understand the unseen. You don't have to explain everything, you just have to express it. And in that expression, something miraculous happens. You become a bridge between the invisible and the visible, between what can't be spoken and what must be said. Expression is not just creativity, it's survival. It's your pressure valve, your translator, your soul's way of saying, this is too big for me alone, let me make it real. Building energetic boundaries, conscious permeability. Sensitivity is not a weakness, it's a signal system, but only if you control the volume. This is the most advanced skill, because intuitive introverts don't just need protection from the outside world, they need protection from themselves. You absorb people, you feel too much, you project, you merge, you vanish. But integration does not mean becoming numb. It means becoming conscious of your openings and closings. Jung called it conscious permeability. You choose when to let the unconscious in, and when to shut the door. How to create energetic boundaries. Visualization rituals. Imagine psychic shields before entering chaotic environments, closing ceremonies. After emotional interactions, wash your hands, light a candle, symbolically release what's not yours. Journaling filters. Write down insights, then label them. Intuition, projection, anxiety, pattern. Ritual separation. Change clothes, take walks, or shift environments between emotional zones. The goal isn't to block everything, it's to filter it, to let in what's true, and release what's noise. The more you practice this, the more you reclaim your identity. Because integration means this: you can sense what others feel without confusing it for your own. You can see deeply into someone's wound without making it your responsibility to heal them. You can be open without being empty. You can be sensitive without being shattered. This is what Jung called standpoint, a centered sovereign self from which you can relate to the unconscious without becoming possessed by it. Integration doesn't erase your gift, it sharpens it, refines it, turns it into something you can live with and live through. You're no longer drowning in perception, you're guiding it, using it, choosing it. You become the eye in the storm, not because the storm stops, but because you've stopped identifying with the lightning. You saw too much, felt too deeply, carried what others could not even name, and you paid for it, with your peace, your relationships, your sense of belonging. But here's what you must understand. You were never broken. You were initiated, not into some mystical fantasy, but into the brutal, beautiful reality of what it means to be an intuitive soul in a surface-level world. Carl Jung never saw you as damaged. He saw you as a bridge, a rare kind of person born to walk between two worlds, the unconscious and the conscious, the invisible and the visible, the truth and the story. But the bridge must learn how to carry its weight, because insight without structure becomes suffering, and sensitivity without protection becomes collapse. This journey was never about getting rid of what you feel. It's about learning how to hold it differently, how to contain it, translate it, use it, because the ones who survive stage 3, the ones who ground their vision, speak their truth, and choose conscious boundaries, become the translators of the human experience, not just for themselves, but for everyone who's still stuck in the storm. So, here's the call. Which stage are you in? Are you discovering your gift? Are you drowning in it? Or are you finally ready to integrate it, to stop surviving your depth and start living through it? Your voice is the map someone else is waiting for. Speak it, write it, share it, even if it shakes, because you were never meant to stay hidden. You were meant to become a mirror, not of what's easy to see, but of what was always there, waiting to be revealed. You are not cursed. You are called. But first, you must survive yourself.